So when a company implements activity-based costing, they can also then implement activity-based management. And so activity-based management is where we're making decisions about our company based on the results of our activity-based costing. And so there's 3 areas that we can have better decision making. We have better information for these decisions because of the work we've done to implement ABC. So pricing and product mix decisions, cost-cutting decisions, and planning and control decisions will have additional information to make better decisions. So for pricing and product mix decisions, activity-based costing is going to be helpful because we can know exactly what the product costs. It's going to help us set a more accurate price. And when we can see that one of our products is more profitable because we have the accurate costing, we may decide to focus on selling the higher profitable, the product with the higher profitability. And then we may decide to shift away from a product that is less profitable. But it's really important that we have the accurate cost, right? In an example that I gave, we saw one product was undercosted, one product was overcosted. You might shift away from the product that's overcosted because you think it costs more than it actually does. And so that's why it's better if we have used the ABC, because we know exactly what the product costs when we're making these decisions to move away from one product and focus on another. And then activity-based management helps us in cutting costs because we have gone and we've studied all of the processes. We have looked at the costs involved. We may have found some inefficiencies in our studies when we look at all the processes. And so here it says that we can focus on the value-added activities and try and minimize the cost for the non-value added activities, right? So in doing these studies, companies that have implemented activity-based management find that they're able to eliminate a lot of inefficiencies in their processes. And then activity-based management can be useful in planning and control decisions, right? Because we have a better idea of the costs that are involved because we have done these detailed studies. We have a more accurate budgets can be created. And then when it comes time to control, to compare the budgeted to the actual, right, we have a better idea of how to investigate the differences. When we need to look at why the actual was different from the budget, we know where to look because we are really in tune with how costs are being incurred. And so we focused on manufacturing in our examples, but merchandisers and service businesses can also benefit from activity-based costing. And so I said we always have to have the cost-benefit tests, right? There's going to be a lot involved in implementing ABC or ABM. And so we want to make sure that it's worth it to incur those costs, that the benefits of what we get from incurring those costs exceed the costs. So if you're in a highly competitive market, you're going to have a greater benefit from implementing activity-based costing because it's extremely competitive. You need to have the most accurate cost information. Your margins are very small. If the risk of cost distortion is high, so cost distortion is where one product is overcosted, one is undercosted, right? So this occurs if you have different products and the processes for manufacturing the products are very different. And so when that's the case, it's worth it to implement ABC. So the cost of adopting ABC, if you already have the technology in place, if you already have a system in place where you can, run the reports and generate the cost by activity, then it's going to obviously make it easier to adopt ABC. And so most companies do say that it was well worth the cost, that the efficiencies that they were able to gain after they learned about their processes offset a lot of the costs that were incurred, and then having the information from those costs help them be more competitive in their pricing and in their goal setting. And so they most of the companies feel like the investment is worth it. So how do you know that perhaps your system for allocating overhead is distorting your costs? If the managers don't seem to understand their costs, then that's a sign that maybe you don't have a good handle on your processes. If you lose bids that you thought you were going to win, or you win bids you were supposed to lose, that could be a sign that you have some cost distortion going on, as well as if your competitors have prices that are much different than yours. And that's kind of a sign that maybe you need to do activity-based costing to study your processes. And so traditional product systems tell us to keep large inventories on hand, right? We can have a problem with that because keeping large inventories on hand, right, just churning out products and storing them on shelves, right, it costs a lot of money to have inventory. It costs money to store it, to insure it. So there's a lot of costs involved with having a large inventory. And then what happens, we have, the intense global competition. We have technology moving at a fast pace. What happens when a new feature comes out on the product? You've got this product without the new feature sitting on your shelves that you have to sell before you can pivot and get to the new technology. So that's why traditional production systems are not used as much anymore. Now the focus has come to lean production systems. And when we talk about lean production systems, right, we're looking at ways to eliminate waste, eliminate cost. And so one of the things that kind of goes along with lean thinking is JIT, just-in-time inventory. So we don't just churn out our product and store them on shelves and then try and find a way to sell it. Is we get the orders and then we start production. So we get the inventory just in time to fill the order. That's the focus of just-in-time inventory. And then we want to look at ways to eliminate waste in our production. And so lean thinking looks at various ways for how we can eliminate waste. So here are many examples of things that are part of lean thinking and lean production. And one thing is looking at the way you design your workspace. And so having self-contained cells where you have all the materials in order and all the tools in order for what you need, so that you just grab what you need, and it kind of focusing on as little movement as possible. So you have everything stored near where you'll be using it instead of having to go and get it and bring it to your workspace. And so we want to try and have reduced setup times. So we try and process smaller batches. We want to have a shorter manufacturing cycle, right? And so we kind of design our workspace thinking about the processes that need to happen. And so the design piece of lean thinking is really important. What problems could arise in a lean production system? Well, if you are ordering your materials as you need them, and a lot of times companies with lean thinking, they'll even have it worked out with their suppliers that they deliver it right to where they need it to begin working, well, then you're really dependent on your supplier. And so if there's a problem with the supplier, or even if there's a weather-related issue, right? Then you're very vulnerable. You're not going to be able to make your customers' demands. So that's probably the biggest drawback, is the reliability on suppliers. Since you don't have a warehouse full of your product, if you don't get what you need from your supplier to make your product, you're basically at a shutdown. And then another focus that goes along with lean thinking is total quality management, right? Because lean thinking is about eliminating waste, and we also want to have the highest quality possible. So when you're looking at total quality management, you're always looking at ways to make things better. So continuous improvement. And so here, with a lot of things that we have to look at in our business strategies, you make investments, you spend money to make money. So we make the investment up front, and we'll get savings later because we're going to have a superior product. We're going to have greater customer satisfaction. We're going to have less defects, less work on the customer service end. And so when we're talking about quality, right, you have to spend money to make money. So some of the costs of quality, so prevention costs. So we want our product to, be superior. We want to avoid defects. And so employee training, so that they're doing a good job when they're manufacturing the product. Improved materials. We don't want to have waste from defective materials that we've bought. And then we want to do preventive maintenance on our machines. So this may involve redesigning your production to have the greatest quality. The next category of quality costs is appraisal costs. So we want to find any poor quality products before they go on to the customer. So we want to have inspection, we want to have testing, right? So these are costs that we have to spend. They're non-value added, but we don't want the defective product getting to the customer. And then internal failure costs. So these are costs that are incurred before delivery to the customer. So if we do have a machine stoppage, we lose production, that's an internal failure cost. If we have defective units, we have to get rid of those defective units. That cost is an internal failure cost. And then external failure costs. These are costs that are incurred after the product is delivered. And so these probably end up being the most expensive costs because you could be losing customers because of this. And so you want to have good customer service, do a good job if a customer does have a defective product, and you take care of the problem swiftly with as little convenience to the customer as possible. That's going to have a better reflection with your customer. If you have a product defect and it causes some sort of loss to your customer, you could have a lawsuit. And so that would be considered an external failure cost. And so we can see between these four categories, right, that spending money on quality is expensive, but we need to incur these costs as we want to keep our customer happy, and we want to be able to put out a product that is high quality.